Hey everybody, it's Romania Black. We are here. We are at Season 3, Act 2 of Ace of the Diamond. Oh my gosh. So, I had actually, the last several episodes, or my reactions, I had recorded ahead. And so, I'm finally pretty much, I took a solid week off of Ace of the Diamond. I was like, okay, I'm going to take a solid week off, let myself settle down from the OVAs. I had recorded ahead because I knew I was going to be doing the OVAs after Season 2 ended. And now that's all said and done. I loved the OVAs. They were great. But we're finally on Season 3. Or they call it Act 2, so I'll probably just put Ace of the Diamond Act 2 instead of Season 3, but y'all know what I mean. And so, it's interesting. So, Season 2 ended in 2015, 2016, and then they took 3 years, because I've got this pulled up on Crunchyroll, and this came out on April 2nd of 2019, so it's been about 3 years. So, will there be a Season 4 and Act 2 Season 2? I really hope so. I really hope so. I would definitely watch it, absolutely, if it came out. I would absolutely watch it. I don't know how that would work. I guess if it came out, I've been doing these in 3 episode increments, and I'm assuming it would be a long season like this, so would I do it week to week and have the cliffhangers, or would I wait 3 weeks and do it per 3 weeks? I don't know. I'd probably have to poll Patreon to see how that would work. But that would be interesting. But I really hope they make a 4th season. I really hope they make an Act 2 Season 2, because I'm going to be very sad when this is over, because I've really come to love Ace of the Diamond. It's probably my favorite sports anime, and I'm like, dang it! It's probably my favorite sports anime so far, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be so sad. Some people in the Discord were asking if I would read the manga, and I don't think I would start reading. I think I'd have to catch up to where this ends. If I did read the manga, I wouldn't want to, gosh, could you imagine going through volume to volume to catch up with all this? I don't think I would do that. I think I would have to read up until the point where Act 2 ends, and then if I did react or talk about it, I'd have to do it afterwards. But I don't know if I will do it. It will just be like a slow, if I read the manga, it'll be like a slow build up to it. But I'm really hoping they make a Season 4, because I'm not ready for this to end. So I think that's another reason I took a solid week off, is that I didn't want to, I was afraid starting, because once you start this final season, once you start Season 3, it's not the final season, I hope, but once you start it, it's like, So, it's all downhill from here. But yeah, so I'm hoping we start where Nationals picked off, because the OVAs and Season 2 ended with them going to Nationals, and they were in day 2, and they were ahead like 3 or 4 to 1 against this team, and Sawamura was coming onto the mountain. So I hope we pick up where that left off at, because I want to at least get closure at that moment before we move on to the next part, right? And I don't know how many episodes we'll do with Nationals, because after Nationals, that's when Koshu and the other players are going to come onto the team. So I don't know how long we'll spend at Nationals, how many rounds they'll get through before they are eliminated. I don't imagine that they win Nationals. I just don't see that. But that's what we got to build up towards. But I do think that they're going to get pretty far. I just don't know what the result is. But let's not waste any more time. I'm excited. I got up this morning, I poured myself some tea and was like, let's start Act 2 and see what all the hubbub is about. Y'all have been pretty excited about this, so am I. But let's get started, shall we? We are going to start Ace of the Diamond Act 2, Episode 1 through 3, and we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1, and let's go. So that's how we're starting the 3rd season. Okay. Holy crap. Okay, I took lots of notes. Man, I feel like these 3 episodes went by very quickly. Having the title cards at the very end of the episode, I like it a lot, but man, it just makes you go, ugh, like when you see it. Whoa. Okay, so we're already at the quarterfinals. That's good. I'm glad this is just, we got a whole season to get through, so I'm glad we're just picking up through this. Nice. Let me say first off, I feel so bad for Sawamura. I feel so badly for him. It's the same problem we face this entire series. And I know that like Zero on Patreon's talked about this. It's almost Zero Anti-Zero is pointing out on the Discord and Patreon that it's kind of like the mangaka Terashima made two protagonists. You have Furuya and Sawamura, and at times it feels like Terashima can't decide which protagonist he wants the story to revolve around. Is it revolving around Furuya, or is it revolving around Sawamura? And I kind of like that in a sense, because it does make the story, it makes you as the audience feel like, okay, there's this back and forth rivalry between them. But man, when they give Furuya highs, they give him highs. And when they give Sawamura lows, they give him lows. Like episode 47 of last season was so great because we finally see Sawamura is our long-suffering protagonist. I think in a sports anime, he's been the most suffering protagonist because he has these amazing moments, like in episode 47 of last season. But man, when they want to drag him through the mud, and I felt so bad for him. And astrology-wise, I am a Taurus, like Sawamura. So Sawamura and I are the same zodiac sign. And I feel it in these episodes. I feel it because Tauruses, astrology is fun. It's just fun goofiness. But there's like the saying that Tauruses are stubborn because it's a bull sign. And Sawamura, and that they can get jealous. And I felt Sawamura's jealousy in this. I was like, just, because it's like Sawamura's like, I relieved the game. I helped close it out, and I didn't get any recognition for it. This season, man, they love to question Sawamura and make us feel like he's just struggling. And I was like, and I get why the show does that. It makes us feel his struggle so that when he does have those moments like in episode 47, it's so damn good because you're like, he finally got to this point. But man, our poor boy, he can't catch a break in these episodes. And I can't hate Furuya because Furuya's just doing the best he can. And Furuya, what makes it so frustrating is that you can't hate Furuya. It's just in these episodes, he does nothing wrong. He's like the protagonist. He's just doing the best he can. He's trying to prove himself and he's growing. It just sucks for Sawamura because Sawamura feels like he's so far behind. And especially after making that declaration that he was going to steal the Aces number, I've never felt it feel so further away from him. And it's so frustrating as the audience, especially if you like Sawamura, that you're like, you want him to become the ace and do well, but it seems like that is nowhere in reach because of how much Furuya is growing. And there are several moments in this. I want to connect to May, and I want to connect that I wish Sawamura had been there, and it's like, ugh, I hate it. I hate it. It makes me so frustrated, but there's a lot of good in this set of episodes too. But yeah, so I'm glad we only spent the first 5 minutes. I'm glad we only spent the first 5 minutes recapping the last two seasons, which really, they didn't recap the second season at all. They just recapped the first season, which was Sawamura's struggle to get up to this point. And then it showed Sawamura's defeat. It's like we just did a reel of Sawamura's worst moment of him costing the game at Inashiro, and then we started here. So I'm like, I was like, I hope we don't backtrack and make Sawamura suffer more, but it seems like we're doing that. I was like, So yeah, and Sawamura has that moment where he slips up right off the bat, and it comes back and he can't stop thinking about it. I'm like, Sawamura, honey, just move forward from it. And it's frustrating. But I do like that Miyuki laughed at the moment that he messed up. Like, Miyuki didn't let it become like a serious, anxious thing. He was just like, he just laughed it off and then was like, okay, let's get in the groove, right? And then Sawamura ends up doing fine. There's only 32 teams in this tournament, which is surprising. I was like, oh, okay. So it's a lot smaller of a national tournament, I feel, than the fall nationals were. It's a lot more condensed, which the teams are really good, right? So it's like, I like that Zono's back off the bench. They kind of established at the end of season 2, Zono had been taken off the bench and they'd been taken off the bench and now he's put back on. I'm glad for that. We're seeing more of Haruichi's eyes. I think we've seen more of Haruichi's eyes in the first episode than we have the last 2 seasons. Like, what? I'm glad we're getting that. I don't know if that's a sign of something or if it's symbolic of something. I keep thinking that we're going to have a moment in this season where like Haruichi cuts his bangs or does something with his hair to show his eyes and he's like, I want to see better or something. I feel like that's going to be symbolic in some way, that maybe he's distancing himself from his brother and becoming his own character. I don't know. I love that Kuromochi has embraced the cheetah nickname. I like that a lot. And that was kind of Carlos's nickname too, so that's interesting, although Carlos is more like a jaguar. So then we have, apparently in the OP and ED, we have new pitchers, new catchers. Interesting. Yui Kaoru, this cinnamon roll. I thought he was Shinji at first, who went to Inashiro, because they kind of have similar hair colors, but Kaoru is a much smaller, more petite catcher. He's interesting. He's interesting. Several of you were noting when Shinji was introduced, they're like, oh, he seems like that character that looks like a cinnamon roll, but is actually a devil in disguise. And I was like, so I wonder if that's the same way with Kaoru, or if Kaoru is, in fact, a cinnamon bun. I do think it's going to be noteworthy, and I'm going to touch base on this later, that when we do zoom out from Kaoru, because Kaoru's just sitting there watching the game, taking notes, he kind of has like a Nabe vibe to him. He seems kind of like Nabe, where he's just taking notes and meticulously organizing all of his thoughts. But two things stood out immediately with him in this set of episodes. One, there's lots of trophies in his house. So unless those trophies are for a sibling, we can assume that he is a good catcher because he's won all these trophies. So there's that. So he is talented, clearly, or at least that's what we're made to believe, maybe through subtext. But two, he made the comment in the first episode that Sawamura was going to be integral for them to win. He's like, well, they'll need that other relief pitcher in order to win nationals. And I was like, so he has a lot of faith in Sawamura right off the bat. And I'm like, interesting. So I'm curious. It seems like he's going to Sato. So we're going to set up Koshu. And until the ED, I hadn't thought about this, but Koshu and Furuya might be interesting because they're such frigid personalities. And I'm like, would Koshu get along with Furuya? If Koshu works with Furuya and they develop like a secret language between one another where they just stare, kind of like what Miyuki and Sawamura have, that would be interesting. But I also wonder if Sawamura is going to get paired up. It showed in the ED like Sawamura and Miyuki paired up, and then like Tojo and Kawakami and Tojo paired up with Kaoru, so that's interesting. It's going to be fun to see how that goes down. But yeah, they won 5-2 in the first round. And then we got introduced to Masamune and Renji. Renji is interesting. I like Renji as a character, but Masamune, I love him. I love him. He's just a jerk, but I love it. I love how he's apathetic. He channels all of his anger into his pitching. He's very dynamic. He's a very interesting character, and he just doesn't give a shit. He's just like, I'm here to win. I didn't come here to make friends. He's like, no. I love that. It's such an interesting thing because you have Masamune who's like, I didn't come here to make friends. I came here to win, damn it. I don't care about any of you. And it's like, oh, it's like the arrogance of Mei taken to an extreme, but the coach is aware of it. And it's so funny because Kunitomo was getting on to Mei for that arrogance. He's like, you think you can just win this yourself? No, you need to work with your team, and you need to be able to be, have synergy with them, and quit thinking this is all on your hands. And he was trying to correct Mei with that. This Coach Nita seems like he's like, no, you think that you're the best and you want to run with it? You've got the talent. Go. He's like, if I've got to be the bad guy and make you pissed off at me, if it makes you a better pitcher, I'm going to do it. I'm like, it's kind of like the opposite of Katioka. Katioka like tries to coddle your heart and inspire you, and Nita's just like, I'm going to piss you off until you pitch better. And it's like, it's great. And Nita has figured out that Masamune is insanely competitive. And he is insanely talented and has the control that he can handle being pissed off and channel it into his pitches. And Nita's like, you've been blessed by the baseball gods. I'm going to use this and make you the best pitcher possible. And it's like, that's what's terrifying, right? That's what's terrifying. It seems like maybe the crack in his armor, though, is that once a runner gets on base, then he seems like just for a second he has like a little bit of hesitancy or slips up just a bare notch. Like once Miyuki got on base in that one inning, he seemed like his pitching changed a little bit, but not enough that Sato was able to take advantage of it. So maybe that's the case. I don't know. But oh my gosh. But he was pissed off because he's had to play in this tournament so far until Sato's game as the relief pitcher. And so he was just getting madder and madder. And then he's mad at Furuya because Furuya's from the same region as him, and he sold himself out to go play with the city boys. And he's like, you're not representing our hometown and what we stand for. And it's like, and Furuya doesn't even care. I like that they say Furuya later. He's like, I don't know any of these people. Like, again, I can't be mad at Furuya because Furuya's like, I don't know any of them. Furuya doesn't hold grudges. That's a thing too. I get frustrated at Sawamura in these episodes because Sawamura seems like his jealousy is getting the better of him and it's eating away at him. And I'm like, Sawamura, honey. And he is trying. Bless his heart. He's trying to be positive and Sawamura is cheering his team on. He's not being stubborn and sitting in the dugout being like, why can't I pitch? He's trying. And that's what makes my heart hurt for Sawamura because I'm like, he is trying his best to overcome his jealousy and be kind and considerate, and Furuya's getting all the praise. It's like, And Furuya, you can't be mad at him because it's like, that's the frustrating part. If Furuya was a jerk about it, it'd be easy for us, the audience, to be like, well, why can't Sawamura catch a break? But here you kind of root for Furuya, but then you also feel bad for Sawamura, and so it's like, Terashima, what are you doing? Why are you ripping our heart like this? But yeah, the interviewing, and all during the interviews, you see Sawamura like just with the rest of the team. And what's frustrating to me is that I've been in that scenario where you see somebody do really good and you do feel jealous and you're like, why can't it be me? And I'm trying hard. Why isn't it working for me? And I feel like Sawamura could almost take from Kawakami in this instance because Kawakami doesn't seem like he feels that same jealousy, even though clearly he should. He's a third year now, and Furuya and Sawamura are taking the limelight from him. But that's kind of in Kawakami's character. And I don't think Kawakami wants to be the ace. Kawakami just wants to be the best pitcher for the team. And we kind of get Sawamura, at first you think, but Sawamura is not selfish. That's the thing that's so frustrating, is that when you see Sawamura get displeased at seeing Furuya having the limelight, it would be easy to get mad at Sawamura because you're like, well, you're just being jealous for selfish reasons. But Sawamura's big thing is that he wants to help the team and he feels useless. He feels like, I'm just a useless pitcher if I can't go out there on the mound and help. And it's like, that's what ties it all back around, right? Sawamura is not a selfish person. He's just pissed off because he can't help the team out like he wants to. And it's like, and you just feel for him. You just feel for him. But also grew up with the coffee. Like he grew up over the summer. I feel like Itsuki grew up too. Some of these characters just grew up. Nita establishes he gets mad at Masamune because Masamune is a terrible interviewer. he's like, Furuya. The funny thing is Furuya doesn't realize he's a terrible interviewer. He's just kind of like, he falls asleep during the interview and he's just not a big communicator. That's just Furuya. Masamune is intentionally being apathetic and dismissive. Masamune is doing it on purpose. He's like, I don't give a shit about you guys. I don't care about the media. You guys are all just the peanut gallery. I'm here to play ball. I don't care about all this superfluous fluff, right? And the coach is like, you need the media on your side. And he's like, I don't know why. Blah. I have to respect Masamune for going balls to the walls with his personality. He's like Masamune isn't a fake character. He's not putting on airs. He's just like, he just gives no screws. Masamune is like, no AFs all around. He's like, I don't care. And it's like, and he's just intense. He's apathetic, but he's also intense. It's crazy. And the animosity from the coach, and you get the impression that the coach, he expects a lot from Masamune, and that's why he's doing this. And then you find out later, yeah, he's going to be the bad guy to make Masamune perform the best that he can. Okay. So then we find out that Kaoru is a catcher. There's lots of pitchers and catchers. There's a pitcher with glasses. I'm excited for the Nationals game. We're already at the quarterfinals. I feel like we're going to get a third of the way through this season to finish off this national tournament. And then the next 2/3 are going to be the aftermath and starting with these new players. I could be wrong. They could lose this game. They could lose it. They could lose in the quarterfinals to Kamadai, and we'll talk about that. But I am excited already to see the dynamics that are going to come. Like these, that's always, we talked in the Discord, that's always a thing where the first years come and shake things up. They shake things up in the series. And now it's so weird seeing Sawamura and Furuya listed as second years and seeing like Kuramochi and Miyuki and Kawakami listed as third years. It's weird. But it's going to be interesting to see how these new first years shake things up, because they seem all like bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to shake up Sato and the team dynamics, and that's going to be interesting, especially depending on how this game ends, right, and how this tournament ends, right? So yeah, so we have Sato versus Shono. Furuya gets 171 km/h pitch. in this game. What? Here's the thing. Furuya is making a name for himself. They say that Nationals is where you make a name for yourself, and Furuya is making a name. And God, this series, Tereshima's like, you know, I know a lot of people complain in some anime that your protagonist gets OP, and then it's not as exciting or dynamic. Tereshima's like, we're going to solve that problem. Because I just felt so bad for Sawamura during episode 2, the start of it, because it's like, man, even though Sawamura's had these great highs and these great moments, he still has a ways to go. And it's like, damn it, we're 130 episodes into this series, and I still feel like Sawamura he's not the OP protagonist, that's for sure. Furuya's not OP either, that's the thing. Furuya, they established, he let 2 runs go in this Kamadai game. Furuya's not perfect. He still has a lot of flaws, but he's making a name for himself, and he's growing because of this tournament. He's growing as a player. And I feel so sad because I feel like Sawamura is not growing. I feel like Sawamura is almost regressing back to how he was in season 2 at the start. I'm like, no! Stop going backwards! Move forward. And I think Sawamura is trying, but he's so frustrated because he can't live up to his own standards. That's the thing. I feel like Sawamura and Raichi are similar in that they set their own standards, and Sawamura in this tournament has felt like he hasn't met up to those standards. He's like, I made a blunder when I first came on the field, my first time. I've made a blunder. I pitched so badly they didn't let me play in the Shono game. They placed Kawakami instead of me to replace Furuya. He's like, I feel like I'm useless. And I'm like, Sawamura, no. And I just, it makes it so hard to watch in places because you're like, you just want Sawamura to realize that he's going to be fine, but he's just so down on himself in these episodes. And I'm like, Sawamura, honey, our sunshine boy. And I think it's fitting that the imagery in this couple of episodes is that it's dark, gloomy, snowy, which is perfect for Furuya because he's used to that climate, but it's not for Sawamura, our sunshine boy. So it's like, But I do think that what makes it so frustrating is twofold as well, because Furuya laments that he hit somebody with his pitch. He gave up runs, and everybody is surprisingly forgiving of Furuya. They're like, well, you gave up 2 runs, but you've been pitching really good. I'm like, if it was Sawamura, y'all would be like, the manager would be like, get Kawakami out, like stressing out. But with Furuya, they're like, well, he's the ace, he'll figure it out. I'm like, that is one thing that's frustrating in this episode, is that I feel like they give Furuya such a break at times. And at Sawamura, they get so worried when he makes the slightest misstep. But with Furuya, he can hit a pitcher and they're like, oh, it's fine. We didn't even show it. We showed it off screen. It wasn't even a thing. I'm like, double standard, show. Double standard. And the second thing that hurts the most is that Sawamura, he's so kind to Furuya. He's like, he keeps trying to encourage him and critique him and do all this, that I'm like, it makes me want to cry. I'm like, no. I hope that Miyuki is not only going to be the one Furuya develops a bond with now that Chris is gone, that he's going to develop... I don't think Sawamura is going to develop a bond with Koshu. I could be wrong, but seeing our other catchers start to come into the fray, I feel like Sawamura could develop a bond with Kaoru, because Kaoru is so nice and Cinnamon Bunny, and he seems to have faith in Sawamura. I don't know how Sawamura is going to work with Koshu. Koshu seems like he'd be very demanding. And Miyuki is demanding, but Miyuki also, in the last season, has come to understand how to... Here's the thing. Miyuki knows how to play pitchers. Miyuki knows what he can do. He knew what he could do with Tamba and get away with. He knew what he could do with Kawakami and get away with. And he knows what he can do with Sawamura and Furuya. And he's gotten better with that, especially with those two, because they were newer last year. So I feel like Miyuki, he knows how to play the game, and he knows how to play to pitchers' egos really well. Koshu seems like he's a little bit more demanding. Like he's going to be like, no. Because we've talked in previous seasons about how it's bad when the catcher coddles the pitcher and the catcher gives in to the pitcher. We've seen how that's bad. It's framed as that's what causes a lot of your problems when the catcher gives in to the pitcher's demands. It's like, no, the catcher makes the decision and the pitcher follows through with it. Right? In this, I don't feel like Koshu... I feel like Koshu's going to be more demanding, and he's like, no, this is how it goes. And I don't know how that would work with Sawamura. I feel like Furuya would work better with Koshu, because Furuya seems like Furuya just wants to do the best job he can. So he's like, okay, if Koshu asks me to do something, I'm going to just give the best pitch I can and we'll go from there. I feel like Koshu and Furuya will work well together. I don't foresee Koshu and Sawamura jiving well. I could be wrong, though. I could be pleasantly surprised. I don't know. Because they frame, I feel like Furuya's spirit animal is a polar bear, because he says he admires polar bears. And that kind of fits Furuya's personality. And I feel like if Koshu is a wolf, as some of you suggested, those are both like Arctic animals. So they get along better, right? Interesting. But yeah. And then Rio gives Haruichi the glove. We don't get to see what Haruichi and Rio said to each other. Of course we don't. That's going to come back like halfway through the season, I'm sure. They're just setting it up. And then Furuya has the 2-run home run, making a name for himself, doing that. And then Nori, I like that Miyuki, he's like, you need to pitch better, Nori. Act like you're at nationals. And he can be a little bit sterner with Nori, and Nori can take it. But I like that Nori's like, I'm trying my best. And they end up winning 7-3 at the bottom of the ninth. In that interview, though, Furuya and Katioka are ridiculously tall. Like, I forget how tall Furuya is. He's like, what, 6'2"? I forget that Furuya is a pretty tall pitcher. Like, it seems like he's grown taller, too. And then poor Sawamura is jealous. And trying his best to overcome it. So then we spend the rest of episode 2 getting like all this. It was like an information overload, like all these different players at once. I was like, oh, too much info, too fast. No. And I almost wanted to go back, but I think I got most of it wrote down. Sonata, Yakushi got invited to the tournament, because of course they did. Sonata, you might as well just marry Raichi now and get into the family somehow, because they're ready. They're ready to adopt you. And you are clearly ready to be adopted. When Sonata was like giving Raichi and Todoroki such praise. Just shut up, y'all. My favorite rival team right now is Yakushi. But God, Hakuryu and Mima. The pitcher Mima. So he's the one in the OP alongside Mei. He seems no nonsense. He seems like if Shunshin and Mei were combined, that would be Mima. That's the impression that I get. He has like Shunshin's calculating look, but the kind of cockiness of Mei in a way. I don't know, but they shut that one team out 11-4, which Komodai shut out one team 10-0. But so Hakuryu, interesting, and Seiseisha with the duel. So Seiseisha's from Osaka. We have that. Okay. And then Kamijo has dual aces. Dual aces, how does that work? Wait, how can we have dual aces? Why is it Sawamura and Furuya dual aces? Are we going to get that? Is that going to be something we can do? Can we solve all of our problems this way? Well, as soon as they said dual aces, I was like, wait, what? You mean this whole time Sawamura's been fighting Furuya for the ace number and we could have had 2 from the start? Hold on. So I'm like, I don't know how that works. I'm assuming we'll find out. How do dual aces work? Is one a catcher and one a pitcher? And that's how we're doing it? What? Show, explain. So, comments, explain. Unless, well, if it's a spoiler, don't explain. If it's gonna be something spoilery, don't explain. But I'm like, this whole time, we've had a battle between Furuya and Sawamura for the ace number, and we could have solved this problem from the start? What? That part I was like, wait, hold on. Okay, and then the twins at Yamamori, who end up getting beat by Yakushi. I'm kind of sad that was off screen. I wanted to see the twins from Yamamori play, the catcher and pitcher duo. And it's so funny, one of my coworkers, she has twin boys. And her twin sons, one is a catcher and one is a pitcher. And I was like, oh! And so as soon as I saw the Yamamori twins, I immediately thought of my coworker and her 2 sons that play. And they play like, they do traveling ball, they do like national teams. They're pretty heavy into it. And they're the catcher-pitcher duo. And I'm like, that's kind of cool. So I felt a connection with them right off the bat. And then they're defeated off screen. I'm like, well, dang it, never mind. The Kotari twins. And then we established that Kiba is a batter for Yoshinasa. And he's really stocky. And he kind of has a Zono vibe to him. Interesting. But they're setting up all these teams for the quarterfinals. Great. And so, Sato versus Kamadai. And Furuya saying that he's inspired. When he said it, what is he inspired by? I was waiting for him to say Sawamura, but that wasn't going to happen. Instead, he's inspired by polar bears. It's his spirit animal. Like, aw, Furuya's a polar bear. And then, and wait, that makes sense, because somebody in the Discord shared a picture of our guys, and Furuya was riding atop of a polar bear. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes more sense now. So we get a little bit with Ochiai, He's back to being somewhat his smug self. Which it's like, okay, good, Ochai. You were starting to get a little different there in the second season. I thought we were going to lose you there. But he says that we should let Furuya pitch the entire game as a whole. I feel like that's what they're going to do. Now, the question is Furuya pitching the entire game? Are they going to be able to catch up? Or is Furuya pitching the entire game going to have them lose? Because I do think it'd be interesting to let him pitch this whole game. I have a feeling they're going to let Masamune pitch the whole game because he's done really well. So if Sato loses with Furuya as the pitcher for the whole game, what is that going to do? They're probably going to forgive him and be like, oh, it's nothing, Furuya, it's totally fine. But I'm like, well, how would that affect Furuya if he pitched the entire game and then they lost by the 2 runs? And those are runs that he gave up in that first inning. Because we've established throughout this entire series that Furuya is not strong at the start of this game. He has to warm up. And then once he gets warmed up, he's great. So, I'm wondering. I'm wondering if they'll make it past Kamadai or not. And if they don't, what's that going to do? I'm looking at the ED, like where it paused here, and you see Furuya and Sawamura and Miyuki's mitts there together. Interesting. Okay, so I don't know. And they're like, their defense has to be strong for this game to work. And so far, their defense has been good. And then we established Furuya doesn't know anybody there. The final thing I'm really frustrated with is that Furuya has this great moment with his team where he like builds up the team's faith and confidence in him. And they ask him, they're like, man, these teams up in Hokkaido, they weren't really strong until last year. They didn't have a really strong team until Masamune started with Kamadai. And we find out they're the team that beat Inashiro at Nationals last year. That's interesting. That gives them a tie, right? So I like that they asked Furuya if he would have gone to a different team. And he says no. He doesn't answer Aso and Kuromochi's question about he went to Tokyo because his grandpa lived there. He didn't answer that question. I think he did. I think part of the reason was his grandfather was there, so he knew somebody. He doesn't answer that question, but he said he wouldn't have gone to a different team. He's learned so much from Sato. And Sato accepted him, and they had Miyuki catching his balls and everything. And that's such a great moment. It's such an inspiring moment. And his team gets such confidence from it. I'm like, oh, wow, Furuya really showed the spirit of the ace there. That was a great little moment. It's the most communication he's gave to the team this entire time. And Sawamura isn't there to see it. He's out there practicing by himself. And I hate the idea that Sawamura is distancing himself and separating himself from the group. I hate it. Because I feel like Sawamura needs to be with the group to grow stronger, and he's just separating himself, and it's so frustrating. And I get Sawamura's anxiety. He's like, I'm useless right now. I'm not able to help my team, and I want to be useful. And it's like, it makes me want to cry. Like that whole end of episode 2, I wanted to cry because I was like, Sawamura, no, honey, you are important, and I want him to do good. And I just felt for Sawamura in these episodes. It was heartbreaking. It was like we were right back to where we were in season 2. That's why they didn't show season 2 in the recap. They didn't want us to remember those good times with Sawamura. They wanted us right back in the thick of it feeling bad for him. Well, it worked. It worked. So, yeah. So then we go to episode 3. And Sasesha goes to the semifinals. All right. I like that in the prep, everybody's focused on the game, and everybody's focusing on the previous games. But we see both Furuya and Sawamura not focusing on what everybody else is focusing on. Furuya's kind of like meditating, like just either meditating or napping, but he's not focused. And Sawamura is stretching and getting himself hyped. It's like, okay. And then Masamune showing up with the sideways hat, like he's like a dark Miyuki showing up. What a card. Oh my gosh, and it's a sold out stadium. It's freezing out. Perfect for our 2 Hokkaido pitchers. A battle of the aces. And then Kaoru, we see Kaoru taking notes, and we see the trophies on the shelf. Like, I'm really excited to see Shinji and Kaoru. Koshu, I have an idea of what Koshu's going to be like. I think Miyuki's not going to like him. I feel like, because here's the thing, I feel like they're setting up, going into this season, Miyuki has set himself up as the captain, the catcher, and the cleanup. He's become the 3 C's that Yuki wanted him to be, and he's become this driving force of the team. And I feel like Kaoru seems like the turtle, like the slow but steady growing kid that he's going to be like, I'm a first year. I want to be dependable. I want y'all to rely on me, but I know my place. He's like, I'm a first year and I'm going to learn from you, Miyuki, and I'm going to get better. And when you're gone next year, I'm going to hopefully take your spot. Like, he seems like that Boy Scout that you're just like, okay, look at you, Kaoru. You're the gung-ho kid that could. Koshu seems like he thinks he's very talented, and he's going to go in there and be like, Miyuki, I'm going to take your spot. And Miyuki's going to be like, excuse me, what? So I'm just waiting. I feel like Kaoru and Miyuki is going to be like a mentor-mentee relationship, where he's going to learn from Miyuki and step up his game to be a good catcher when Miyuki's gone. I feel like Koshu and Miyuki is going to be like Chris and Miyuki back in season 1, where Miyuki was like, I'm going to take your spot, Chris, and I'm going to take it from you. I feel like that's how Koshu is going to be with Miyuki. Now, the question is, Chris had to stay out all of the games because he had an injury, and that's when Miyuki stepped up. I don't foresee Miyuki falling into the same rut that Chris did. So, is Koshu going to have the talent to really give Miyuki a run for his money? And how is Miyuki going to react to that? Because last season, Miyuki's like, I'm not giving up. It's like, sorry, Ono, I'm not giving up this position unless I have to. You're going to have to sit the bench. I don't know if Koshu's really good like he projects himself as. Is Miyuki going to have trouble with that? I don't know. It's going to be interesting, right? But getting back to the game, Masamune, I like that they describe him as he looks wild, but he has excellent control. And then Raichi's all excited. Raichi's like, I want to hit that. Come on, let me play them. Whew. And yeah, Masu channeling his anger into his pitching. Nita saying he'll be the bad guy if it makes him better. Okay, that's a coaching style. Furuya, I like Furuya getting faster and still getting the hits. But I like that Furuya was the faster first pitcher in the game. Like, Masamune did 150 kilometers per hour. Furuya did 153. But his pitch was still hit. And then the first inning, it's 2-0 leading into the fourth. And so, Itsuki's looking older. We cut back to Inashiro. Itsuki's looking older. Curious. Inashiro's watching the game, right? We don't see Mei. Where's Mei at? I kept expecting them to flash to the stadium and Mei like being up in the crowd watching. We see Mima watching. I kept imagining that Mei would be in the stands watching the game, to support his ex-boyfriend. So I kept feeling like we were going to cut to Mei and he'd be there, but we don't see Mei and we don't see Shinji. So I'm like, are Mei and Shinji off being buddies and, getting some team pitcher bonding going on? But Mei is decisively not there, which is a curious comparison to Sawamura. I wanted to make that note. Sawamura, we talked about this in the Discord, that there was a look in the last season, I think it was when they were facing Yakushi, there is a look that Sawamura gives Akiba, or not Akiba, Mishima. He gives Mishima when he's like about to steal the base. Sawamura gives this like cocky, like he has his nose up in the air and he's like, you gonna try to steal? Like he has that look on his face. And we were talking, Kelsey was talking in the Discord, she's like, that's the most Mei expression we've ever seen Sawamura make. And it's like, So, I'm curious. Mei went through this breakdown, and he had to grow stronger because of it. Sawamura's gone through the yips and gotten stronger for it. But I'm seeing a little bit of a comparison between Sawamura and Mei in these episodes, in that Sawamura has distanced himself from everybody because he's frustrated that he's not being able to perform like Furuya and not given the chance to. And when he has been given the chance this Nationals game, he didn't meet up to his own expectations. And in this last episode, we see Inashiro watching, but Mei is not with them. Or at least we don't see Mei. So that's curious to me. That's a curious comparison. But yeah, also Furuya not getting talked down. I get there in the middle of the game. They don't want to make their ace lose confidence, especially when it's needed, right? But Renji saying, I like Renji a lot. Renji's kind of like Renji is probably the most Miyuki-like catcher that I think I've seen so far in this series, and maybe it's just the glasses. But he also doesn't, let it be known, Miyuki is a bougie boy. Miyuki is a bougie boy. His dad in that steel mill making the money so he can afford the high optic fiber glasses to wear during his sports match. Renji is not blessed with such wealth. He has to wear his regular glasses during catching. I'm like, Miyuki's a rich boy. Miyuki's a rich boy. Let it be known. But yeah, I like that Renji establishes that Masamune is the most competitive person he's ever met. And he wants to face Furuya. And I love that as they're facing down each other, it starts to snow. It's such a cool thing. And I love the scene with Nita and the snow. And he's like, Furuya, he's like, you went to Tokyo to play. He's like, do you understand what it's like to pitch a ball on an all-white field, to slide on the ice like we've had to do when we practice? He's like, do you know what that's like? And that shot, probably my favorite scene in this set of episodes, is the whole team watching Coach Nita with the shovel, shoveling the snow himself off the diamond and saying, okay, now we're ready to start practice. Like, that line from Masamune, he's like a demon who sold his soul to baseball. He like did whatever it took. Because it's a nice callback to the OVA, to OVA 4, where they show the winter training camp. And it wasn't really even winter there. It was cold, but there wasn't snow on the ground. And all of the players on Sato were just like, this is hell. I hate this. And Masamune, he kind of like throws it back at us as the audience, being like, oh, they thought they had it rough. Oh, they thought their winter tournaments were rough. Like, look what our coach did for us, and look what we had to play in. And he's like, we didn't complain. He's like, we've sold ourselves to baseball, and this is all we want. We want the championship title, and we'll do what we can to get it. He's like, we're here to take names. And I love that he calls Furuya out, and he's like, you big city pansies. I'm like, oh, it's kind of like the realization of Maki. I feel like Masamune is what Maki wanted to be, but just didn't have the resolve, right? Because Maki was like, oh, I hate Sato, and I have this chip on my shoulder because of Sato. Masamune is the realization of that. He's like, no, you all are big city kids that think you have it tough. He's like, no, we're here to take names. We ain't here to be nice. I'm like, okay. I love it. I'm all aboard Masamune's character. He's just a total jerk, but I'm like, he's so committed to it. I'm like, okay, I'm here for it. And so then, yeah, and you think when Miyuki gets on base that it's going to be this great thing and they're going to have a chance to score. Nope. Not happening. And then, yeah, I like the Shirakawa. Shirakawa gets on to Miyuki right before Miyuki gets on base. Shirakawa's like, you guys are representing us. Like, show it. And I'm like, Shirakawa, you are the least person who should say this. I'm not a Shirakawa fan, to be honest. He's probably one of my least favorite characters in the show because he's so cocky. And it's not like cocky in a way that it's... When Mei is cocky, it's endearing. It's charming because it's almost humorous. When Masamune is cocky, he's got the talent to back it up. Shirakawa, I'm like, yeah, you're good, but you really shouldn't be so cocky. I don't know. And there may be some Shirakawa fans, but I'm not necessarily one of them. And so, yeah, it's top of the 7th inning, 0-2. And then we get Nishi. Nishi is the captain of Kamadai. He's a second baseman, and he's the captain. He seems like such a nice guy. He seems very much like a Tojo or like a sweet guy that's like, come on, Masamune. And Masamune just ignores him. He's just like, nope, not having it, not listening to you. It's just like, again, Masamune is what Kunitomo did not want Mei to become. Nita is pushing Masamune to become. That's so fascinating. I love this dynamic. I love that we're in the 3rd season of this series, and there's still character dynamics being introduced that I didn't even think about, and then I'm like, huh, okay, cool. So it's an ace battle. With the moment they said it was an ace battle, I'm like, I don't think they're going to take out Furuya. I think they're going to do what Ochiai's wanted to do this entire time. Now the question is, it's either going to go one of two ways. If they keep Furuya in for this next set of episodes to finish out the game, it's either going to go one of two ways. Either it's going to work and Sato's going to catch up and Furuya's going to get praised as being this ace that stuck it out all 9 innings, even though Sawamura did it first. It's just going to be even more frustrating. It's either going to do that or they're going to lose. Sato's going to lose in the quarterfinals and it's all going to be on Furuya. And I'm sure they're going to totally forgive him because he's the ace, whatevs. But I'm curious to know if they do lose with Furuya staying in all 9 innings, if that's going to affect Furuya in some way, shape, or form. I'm curious, right? And then, yeah, Nita acknowledging Furuya as a good pitcher, and I'm sure that just gets under Masamune's skin even more, because he's like, oh, you're acknowledging him, but not me? Huh? So, oh my god. We're only in the first 3 episodes of this Act 2 season, and my anxiety is already an all-time high again. Should I be surprised? No, probably not. At this point, why am I surprised? Why am I surprised that this show is making me freak out already? And we're only 3 episodes in. So, it looks like it's going to be a wild ride. Y'all have been hyping up Act 2, saying it's one of your favorites, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm already tense. I'm hyped. And I guess we'll just see what happens, won't we? So, I hope y'all enjoyed this reaction discussion. I am very curious to hear your comments down below. Please, no spoilers. But I am so excited to see what happens next. So, in the meantime, I hope y'all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe. Take care. And yeah, I'll be back real soon with episodes 4, 5, and 6 of Ace of the Diamond Act 2.